Welcome back. This week we are talking about customer service. This is a big part of what you do as a distribution operator, dealing with your customers, dealing with the ratepayers. They are our eyes and ears out there in the system, letting us know when things are going right, when they're going wrong, especially. So having good customer service is very important in this industry. So, one thing's for sure, you got death taxes and customer service complaints. Um, in my, 20 years of doing this, I can't tell you how many I've responded to, but typically they're not all bad. Most of them go fairly well. There's only been a few times that, it hasn't ended well. Um, but the way to be successful when dealing with customer complaints is being prepared, being knowledgeable, and being professional. You can handle just about every single situation with those three things. So, having that customer relationship skill is very vital. You want to be able to pick up on social cues. You want to be able to just understand, does this customer really have a problem or do they just want to be heard? I could tell you I've sat on the phone for 20 minutes with a customer who just talked the entire time and I didn't say a single thing. And then at the end of it, they just said they needed to go grocery shopping and hung up on me. So, you know, but I was there and, just being courteous to them. Um, can you solve their problem? So having problem solving skills is also very important because they're going to give you a lot of information and being able to decipher that information into what exactly the problem is a skill in of itself. So you need to be knowledgeable, you need to understand hydraulics, you need to have the ability to produce detailed documents, right? That is extremely important. Um, you need to keep really detailed records because a lot of times these are repeat customers or repeat complainers. And so you want to develop a history of information. But then even if it is a one-off, you definitely want to have accurate records as to what happened because they could come back and say, "Hey, look, you did X, and when in fact you only did Y," and but they're gonna complain and say you broke something, and then if you don't have detailed records of everything that took place, then the district or your agency, city, whatever, could be on the hook for having to, pay for these repairs. So some guidelines here, do your homework. You want to have the customer data, all their information. You want to know system info. You want to have, or be aware of any recent activities or similar complaints. Sometimes, it is, something going on in the street. It's so you might have multiple customers complaining about a similar problem. Um, Most of the time, it's probably going to be a one-off. It'll be isolated to their house, but you want to be friendly and courteous. You're not there to be argumentative with them. Like I said, most people just want to be heard. I don't care if they win the argument. It's not about that. It's, can I solve your problem? And if I can't, what can I do to help you? If I can't help you, then maybe we can elevate this to someone who can. But like I said here, thank the customer for reporting the problem. They are our eyes and ears out in the system. We can't be everywhere all the time. So it's important that we understand that, when they report a problem, it's almost, we got to take it with a level of seriousness because there may be an issue. A lot of times it could be that they're just sensitive to something and they're a canary, if you will, that let us know, hey, something's going on, and it might just be isolated to them, or it could be a serious issue. So it's important that we understand that. Listen calmly, to the description, right? If I call up and I say, hey, I've got air in my line and I'm not sure what to do. Was there a shutdown in the area? Maybe it's not them that the problem's originating with. Maybe it's something that happened out in the system. I had one customer call up and say that their water tasted horrible. I went out to their house, pulled a sample off of a hose bib in the front, and sure enough, it tasted like acid. After testing the water, they had 5.6 on the pH scale. So I'm not sure how that happened, but I wound up flushing that line for a really long time to get their water quality back. Um, So it's just having those understanding, not using technical language, obviously. If you start talking about, cubic feet per second to a customer, they're probably going to glaze over you with the look and not understand what it is. So you want to make sure that, they understand what it is you're talking about. Um, if you don't know what the answer to their problem is, you can always just go look it up, or, let them know that you don't know. It's okay. Um, you really want to avoid speculation. Like it says there, it can be held against you. If you start speculating on things, customers are, it's like the one time they're really going to listen to what you're having to say. So they will key in on those things. And so you definitely want to avoid speculating on what a problem may be. It's okay to have the thoughts and maybe go research it yourself without saying so to the customer before you inform them of anything. Um, but like I said, if you're going down that path, then just assure them that the problem will be addressed and that you'll get back to them. Again, keep detailed records for a lot of good reasons, but mostly it's a CYA kind of thing. So you definitely want to make sure that you are covered. And then if you're having trouble dealing with a customer, finding some relatable ground is always helpful. People complain about their bills all the time, because they've got all these other, bills that they have to pay, and then on top of it, there's the water company who's raising their rates to cover their operating costs, and so it's okay to let them know that hey, you're probably in that same boat. You know, we don't get a break on our water bill just because we work for the company. Um, so just letting them, finding some kind of relatable ground is usually going to help with the customer's attitude and make the conversation go a little bit more smoothly. Most of your problems can be handled over the phone if have the knowledge and the ability to do that. I do what I can to resolve any problems over the phone, just because it's more efficient that way. Uh, there will be times where, you realize that a problem could have been resolved over the phone. However, that customer just didn't want that, and you wound up having to go out there anyway. I had a lady call up one time saying that she had no water. So when I got to the house, I realized that the ball valve, like right next to the front door, had been shut. And something that she could have done, but she had no interest in trying to figure that one out. So you never know. But if you can resolve these issues over the phone, there could be a lot of issues. It could be pressure, it could be taste and odor, it could be temperature. I had a lady call and say, "Hey, can you guys turn down the hot water line?" And it's just not everybody has a working knowledge of how the, infrastructure is laid out and how it works. Field investigations are very important. So before you go out to a call, it's a good idea to one, set a date and time so that way it's amenable to both you and the customer. Be presentable, but then do your research, right? Understand, do you have a sampling site nearby? What are the numbers on that? Has it been tested recently? What's going on in the system? Is there construction? Is this customer a frequent caller? And, they routinely complain about the same thing all the time. So it's good idea to do your homework prior to going out on a call. Um, so you want to make sure that when you do arrive on that call, that you have everything that you need. You want to make sure that you have your test kits, that you have a pressure gauge, you got the tools that you need to assist them, right? You don't want to have to go out there and then realize that you forgot something and then have to turn around, come back, waste everyone's time, right? Um, if you can explain the problem, explain it to them. People aren't dumb by any means. So, you got to give them respect that, they'll understand what you're saying. But going back to what I said earlier, maybe not use technical language unless you realize that, it's, uh, you know, something that they will understand. But then take the actions to help them. And then if you need to follow up with that customer later at a later time, just to make sure that everything is still going right. Air in the line could be presented as milky water, or it could be high turbidity if it's cloudy. And so if it dissolves from the bottom up, it's air. If it dissolves from the top down, then you got a bigger problem. You got some kind of debris. Um, But then a lot of that could be a result of a shutdown or a main break or a hit fire hydrant. I can recall one time when a hit fire hydrant took place in one of our systems that, caused water quality, or not water quality, but like taste and odor issues throughout the entire system in that pressure zone, just because it was high pressure and it scoured the lines everywhere. So you never know, you got to really have a good understanding of your system in order to be effective here. But you can also flush a nearby fire hydrant if there is debris that I've had that happen. It was customer was the last one at a dead end, but thankfully there was a fire hydrant right there, so I opened it up, flushed it out, and their problem was resolved. Um, Chlorine samples can be really good for you. You can indicate, whether or not there's something in the water, or that it is, like if there's like, let's say, a leak that's showing up. You're unsure what it is though, because it's too small at the time. It's not a real big main break. You can sample it for chlorine to determine, is this system water, is it groundwater? If you ask a customer to run a faucet or a shower to clear the air in the line, for example, make sure you tell them to do it out of a shower head at the highest point in the home. Air likes to go up and rise, so it makes no sense to have them flushing it out of a kitchen sink because that's probably not the highest point in the home. Uh, but at the same time, you don't want them flushing your distribution system. So I usually advise customers you can flush from a shower head, but please don't do it for more than 2 minutes because then it's likely that they're, bringing in this problem from the main, and it's not their responsibility to flush the main for you. Here you go. You can see an example of, air in a line, or in a cup here as, it dissipates from the bottom up. Temperature changes are also another big issue. Those can create taste and odor issues. You get lake turnover or something, so that will affect your treatment process, and then, of course, that water is still being sent out to the system. High and low pressure problems. Um, these can, you know, present themselves in many different ways. Is the problem isolated to just the inside of the home, or is it on the outside of the home as well? Do they have a pressure regulator? Um, are all the valves open? There's a lot of different ways to, go about investigating this. Usually, the way I would approach it is I would have a pressure gauge that I would connect to a hose bib, typically on the back side of the house, downstream of their pressure regulator, and then you just have them turn on a faucet in the home and you watch the gauge. If the gauge drops when they turn on that faucet and it stays low, it's typically a pressure regulator issue. Or or it could be, that a valve is partially closed and they're just not getting that flow. So that's one way to investigate that. If it stays, well, let's see. If they, are having high pressure issues, that too could be a pressure regulator issue. Your pressure regulators are typically factory set between 50 and 60 psi. Reason being is because your appliances are only rated to 50 to 60 psi. So if they're running high pressure in their home, they could damage their appliances as well. So just a little general knowledge on that. And then also, most pressure regulators are set so that way, if in if you screw in the not the nut, the bolt on it on the top of that pressure regulator. So in to increase is one way to remember it. Um, Anytime you're adjusting a pressure regulator, though, you want to make sure you have water flowing at the same time, because it can, the slightest turn on those things can increase that pressure a lot depending on the spring tension. Again, check your system. Make sure that, the problem isn't a bigger issue. You can usually get some pressure set points via SCADA. Is there a main break that happened? That could be another reason for, pressure issues. Again, always check the customer history if you can. Take pressure readings at hydrants, take pressure readings from the customer side, both front and back. Do what you can to help the customer, right? Like we're talking about customer service right now. So this is, you're one way to help them out is do what you can to help them. Um, but absolutely never go inside their home. It's if you are in a position where you have to go inside their home, make sure you have somebody with you. Um, or let them know that you're going to record it, you know? That way, they can't come back to you and say that you did something you didn't, right? Again, CYA, you got to protect yourself here. No water problems. Again, are all the valves open? Has this customer paid their bill? Are they locked off for non-payment? Have they done any plumbing? Are the neighbors having the same issue? I had a call one night where a lady said, her at her dad's place, he had no water, and I go out there to find out that, they, had shut off the water to the entire community to perform maintenance, and he had forgot. So, that was a pretty easy one to resolve. It's just troubleshooting, right? You're troubleshooting, and a lot of this, again, it can be performed over the phone. You don't absolutely need to go out to the customer's home in order to test this stuff and figure it out. Again, like I said, are they on the lock list? Did they pay their bill? Do they have a history of no water? Um, Main breaks? Is there, did somebody just shut off like, a valve? I've had that happen numerous times where that you've got a row of meters next to each other. Somebody goes out to do maintenance on their property and they shut the wrong meter off, in trying to figure out which one is theirs. And then they never go back and turn on the ones that they knew weren't theirs. Um, that could be an issue. The gate valves failing, that happens a lot. You've got, when you depressurize on one side of a gate valve, you've got all that force against that wafer, and I'm talking the small stuff here. Um, it could break as they're trying to open it, and now you've got this, no water issue because the hand wheel or the stem snapped in half, and that wafer's in a closed position. So, um, have they had any kind of plumbing done? Maybe that's the issue. Maybe there's shavings that are creating a blockage. I've had one call where customer had so much calcium built up in their faucet, and that's why they had no water. So you got to do some investigating work, but those are some of the reasons why you might have no water. The pressure regulator could have failed in the closed position. You never know. Taste and odor. Like I said, you probably have some canaries out in your system who are just, and when I say that, that's, canaries down in the old mining days were down there because they were very sensitive to the atmosphere. And if you saw them dropping, then you knew that there was an issue. We have people out in our system here in VID who let us know that, hey, we've got some uh, geosmin outbreak. And so you can tell that the treatment technique has been modified. And they let us know that, hey, it's coming. It's got this earthy taste to it. It's not that it's unsafe, it's just an aesthetics issue. Um, Again, does it taste like chlorine? Maybe there's a chlorine dosing issue if you have a booster station. Like I said, an earthy taste, rotten egg smell. It could be anything, right? You want to investigate, is it at one place in the home or is it throughout the entire home? Because a lot of times, most of the time, you find that it's actually their drain that when they turn on the faucet, it's breaking that surface tension inside that P trap, and that's when that odor comes up. But they're associating it with turning on the water, and so that's why they're calling you saying, "Hey, your water smells bad," and when in fact it's probably something in their drain. Water softeners or filters can also be an issue. Temperature is obviously an issue. Um, if inside the house, ask the customer to draw a sample from an outside faucet and smell. So basically, what you're doing is you're taking them away from the drain. That could be the issue. If they draw the sample, because it could be the room itself. You never know. You remove them from that atmosphere and then have them smell it and see if there's an issue. Um, Again, if it's likely they're drained, but if it smells like that everywhere in their home, it might be an actual issue. So you don't want to, blindly go into it and think that that's always the problem. That's just one way to, one box to check in your investigation. You may need to schedule an appointment and go out there and check it, you know. So, so customer service, right? Be prepared, be courteous, be professional. Like we said in the beginning, knowledge will carry you a long way, and customer service and being polite will carry you the rest of the way. Some customers are angry, and there's just no way around it, but you don't need to put up with it. Um, when they are that way, obviously they're not thinking clearly, so don't match that energy. Just be calm. You can always walk away. You don't have to put up with that. Are if you're being threatened, leave. At that point, there's nothing you could do. I can only think of one time in my career where I had to call 911 because somebody was actively threatening to kill me. And then, of course, when the police showed up, he denied everything. But um, it's an option you have. You got to protect yourself. And with that, that's this week's lecture. That's this lecture. I got one more for you. All right.